Elokim. We're going to do okay. We'll do Shara Bechina, 160. Omar Machaber. And they shigdamnu b'shara rishon ofnei gichur elokim b'leiv sholem. He says, since we've already spoken in the first chapter or first gate, the first section, the various ways to come upon and understanding the unity of God in a complete sense. V'hoya b'chino b'chochma hanires b'brios habor yisale haderach hakrov b'yosel bir ha'metziuso. If you remember, he had said, how do you come upon understanding the unity of God? He compared it to the sun. You look directly into the sun, it blinds you. But if you see the benefit of the sun, its rays, many levels, what it does, then you have an inkling of who the Creator is. To look directly at the sun, you can't appreciate what the value of the sun is because you're blinded by it. But if you look and you observe and evaluate to what degree the sun affects existence and its value to existence, then you begin understanding what you don't understand. God's unlimited power, and that's just the sun. So the same thing, by evaluating and reflecting and perceiving things what they are, it gives us an understanding of God in terms of appreciating who He is. If you appreciate who He is, and then you relate to who He is, then you behave differently. Because a person, if he's appreciative, naturally, a person reciprocates. You know, in Hebrew, the Hebrew language is very descriptive. You say the word appreciation. We know what the word appreciation means. To appreciate. But appreciation is the result. What is the basis for appreciation? What is it? So you have to come up with a whole thing, but it doesn't line the word appreciation. In Hebrew, how do you say appreciation? Of course, the recognition of the good. If you recognize that you're a beneficiary of somebody else's goodness, the result is appreciation. You reciprocate. So why are people not appreciative? Because they don't really appreciate that something that was done on their behalf was anything special. Right? That's the problem. The person does a favor to another person. You had your reason. Were you really interested in me? So you don't appreciate it. That automatically blurs and interferes with the ability to be appreciative. But if you truly understand that what you receive is only because He did good to you, and the only reason why you're able to function or achieve or advance yourself is because of the other person's kindness, the way God created a human being, you're naturally appreciative. You naturally reciprocate. So if we focus and we're able to appreciate what God does on our behalf by providing existence, so everything is what? Is evaluation. Bechina means to reflect in a way to understand the reality of whatever is happening. V'hoisa bechina b'chochma haniris v'brius labore. He says the reflection with wisdom, with the obvious wisdom, God's wisdom, in the creation. Haderach hakrov b'yoseh abir b'tziyuso. That's the best. That's the closest way to verify and clarify His existence, His essence. Va'nosiv hasolul l'dasa mitoso. He says the path, which is the straightest path, the surest path, to understand His truthfulness. His chayavnu ladbik elov, that obligates us to attach ourselves to that path. To associate this gate to the other gates, which means one gate is built on the other gate. If you don't believe in God, you know, the world is a phenomenal world, and who are you being appreciative to? Right? So where does it begin? You have to believe in God. If you believe in God, now, like a person, what has God done for me lately? Right? People talk this way. What has he done for me lately? Okay? So, what's the problem? So the person believes in God, but he doesn't see how he's a beneficiary of God's kindness and goodness. You know? It's been sub-0 degrees. It hasn't been this way. You know, I wish it would be warmer. Next day it's warmer. Right? There's no hazardous driving. They lowered your insurance premium because it hasn't snowed in the past 25 years. Right? You could take off collision. You don't need that kind. You're appreciative. Here you're complaining. It's been so cold and this and that. Are you appreciative to God that the weather has gotten better? Well, that's climate. Of course, God could have made the difference. But again, if you reflect and you understand what God does on your behalf, even to the smallest degree, you're appreciative and you serve Him differently. And this will obligate us in service which we were created specifically for that purpose. Shlomo says, God made everything that we should fear. We should fear Him. We should revere Him. And this point is a very important point because it has relevance to a lot of people. It has relevance to everyone. Normally, if an individual does something special for another person, and you recognize it, what does that cause? A greater level of appreciation, greater level of dedication. Nothing's too difficult. If the person clearly understands what the other person did on his behalf, but he says with Hashem, it's just to the contrary. The more God does for you, the less you do for Him. He gives the example. The example is a person starts succeeding. Till he began succeeding on an exceptional level, what happened? 3 times a day with a minyan. Set aside time to study. Start succeeding? No. Can't afford to be in shul 3 times a day. Shachris, Ma'ariv. Then business starts really moving, advancing. He has to take on other employees. He has to start traveling. He opens a store in other communities. Starts manufacturing. He gets so busy, Shabbos is the only day he can daven with a minyan. Motzoi Shabbos, he has to go out of town. He barely has time to make Havdalah. The more God, and the person doesn't deny for a moment, it's all God's blessing. But he says, but I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility. God gives me a gift. You have to maintain it. You can't be negligent. You can't be irresponsible. But what's happening? You don't deny that it's a gift of God, but simultaneously, rather than increasing your reverence and your thankfulness to Him and dedication, everything's being undermined. And that's the reality. I haven't seen a person, maybe, you can count it on one hand, due to a success that it increased his religiosity, it only actually weakened it. I'm not saying he's less of a believer, but a certain fervent dedication that he had before, it's lessened, factually. He believes he knows better. He becomes an expert, even though his expertise is in other things. If I succeed to this degree, I think I have a right to make my decision. I'm responsible, whatever it is. But after everything's said and done, I'll tell you a story recently with Reb Steinman. A person comes to Reb Steinman and says he wants to be his partner in Olam Haba, in the world to come, just within the past month. He'd like to be his, and he'll give $60,000 to charity. You ever hear such a thing? A person wants to buy the Hope Diamond for $5. Okay? But this is the offer he makes. And the man could afford to give $10 million, okay? So Rav Steinman says to the man, he says, you know, the Kolim in Israel have a problem, and we could resolve the problem if you give $6 million. If you give $6 million to deal with the debt, I'm happy you should be my partner in the world to come. And says, not more than 60,000. So Rav Steinman says, it's no deal. So after he left, Rav Steinman, he's 102 years old, he has a sense of humor. He says, you know something? If he would have given the $6 million, I wanted to be his partner in the world to come. It's interesting. I was just there. I spent half an hour with him just now when I was in Israel. And the days he's very weak, and the days where he could walk and talk and everything. So, and he was back, his sense of humor. I mean, he has a certain sense of humor, and he has a certain way of expressing himself. He's back to himself. This kind of comment, this kind of response. Okay, to be continued. See, when David disappears, we don't really know where he goes. Today's taking a short trip, okay? I'll take a Yishtabach, of course, but I'll make it back for Kaddish. The Kaddish before, you know. Yeah. If you want, you could go up to Yishtabach. Okay. Okay, so you understand where this person is coming from. It's okay, it's the same thing. It's like going to Tiffany's and say, you know, I want to pay a third or a quarter of the price. They say, you out of your mind? You see the price? That's what it costs. You have to redeem your soul. The Torah speaks about pidyon nefesh. If your animal kills a person, same thing, pidyon nefesh. Sometimes you have to redeem your soul. You know, a person has a lot of spiritual baggage, negative baggage, you have to get rid of it. So by doing certain things, that relieves you of that negative baggage. To do something special. Obscene. That's why the guy only offered 60,000, because anything more was obscene. Whatever it is, but it's a good. Okay, we'll leave it for the Musa period. What? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. People fast for pidyon nefesh. It's not just selling it. I did many stories with the Vilna Gaon, with the Esra, correct? There's a story with the Chofetz Chaim. Hello? There's a story with the Chofetz Chaim about Purim. Purim. There's a picture. I don't know if you saw it. They just discovered, there was a Knessia Gedola, 1923 in Vienna, and the Chofetz Chaim attended it. Chofetz Chaim was 85 at the time. And they found a newsreel of the Chofetz Chaim walking into Knessia with his grandson, or son-in-law. And there's a picture of the Chofetz Chaim. The picture of the Chofetz Chaim does not look like the photograph that we have. Does not look. Does not. It's not. The picture we have is a painting that was somehow enhanced. It's not the real picture of the Chofetz Chaim. It was touched up. Yeah. Where was that? In Vienna. Yeah. Yeah. So what happened was it was Purim, and Purim there's a mitzvah to become intoxicated. So this was in Radin. And one of the students comes over to the Chofetz Chaim, and very few people approached him. He was a very holy man, and everybody knew he was very holy. And to speak to him in a certain way, definitely not. But the Bacher was drunk. He comes over to Chofetz Chaim, he says, I want to be a partner in Olam Haba. Chofetz Chaim ignores him, doesn't pay attention to him. And he pesters him without a let-up, and he keeps following the Chofetz Chaim, I want to be a partner in Olam Haba. And the Chofetz Chaim stops for a moment, looks him square in the eye, he says, on one condition. You know what it means to be the partner of Chofetz Chaim in Olam Haba? The story with the Dibuk, it was a famous story with the Dibuk, that a forlorn soul went into a girl, and the Chofetz Chaim actually convened a minyan to exorcise the soul from this girl. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman was one of those people who was part of that minyan. And the Dibiks said about the Chofetz Chaim that in the world to come, the hasmoda of the Chofetz Chaim in learning, his level of diligence and involvement and lack of distraction is almost borders on the diligence of a Tana. That's what the Dibuk, this forlorn soul, said about the Chofetz Chaim. He said this in the presence of 10 people. The 10 people who were going to actually exercise the soul. There was a whole thing. They agreed. They would learn Mishnayos on behalf of the Neshama and say Kaddish on. Only then did this forlorn soul leave the body of the girl. He said, this is the Chofetz Chaim's. So you can imagine. So Chofetz Chaim says, on one condition. He says, looks the boy straight in the eye, on one condition, that if you accept upon yourself never for the rest of your life to speak Lashon Hara, then you could be my partner in the world to come. So the boy he immediately sobered up. When he was so direct with him, he sobered up immediately because he understood how serious it was. He thought for a moment. He says, he can't do it. Could you imagine? Turned it down. When the Chofetz Chaim heard that, he looked at him with disgust, just turned away from him, walked away. I offered you a share. For that, you mean you can't control yourself? He says, can't do it. Chofetz Chaim walked away from him in disgust. Okay? Okay.